Hello everybody, my name is Kyle9. Welcome back to another video. Today in this one I'll be doing another tier list video, and in this one I'll be doing a tier list on Handtrap's post Valiant smashers. Yeah, so that's kind of the big argument in the meta right now. Do you play Handtraps or do you play board breakers? If you want my personal opinion, I think a good mix of both might be in there, as long as those are high impact cards, right? But, you know, in certain matchups, you're going to want the hand traps, unlike the Infernobles and the Manadiums. In other matchups, like the Unchains or the Rescues, you might prefer a board breaker instead. I don't think there's really a correct answer. It just depends on what you're really scared of. So in this video, I'll be doing hand traps, and in my next video, I'll be doing it on board breakers. So without further ado, let's get into the video, shall we? So we're gonna be starting off with Lancia here, which, to be honest, just this doesn't hit anything that much. Like, Lancia maybe hits Rescue, and like maybe if you're scared of Flunder as well, but I think besides that, I just don't think it's worth it. We'll put Chaos Hunter here as well. I think Chaos Hunter is just a tad bit better than Lancia. Just because if you verse like a Vanquish goal and maybe you're scared of like Shifter or something like that, then maybe this can do something. But I just don't see it. I don't think you should be playing these cards in the meta. I'm not saying they're bad cards. I just don't think this is the meta for it. So just don't. Ash Blossom in Joyous Spring. Again, so I was saying if you're going to play a hand trap, you probably want to play like a high impact hand trap. This is the one exception because Ash is Ash. It always will probably be in most people's main deck if you're deciding to play a hand trap. Why is that? Just because you can pretty much hit every deck with it. That's just how Ash has always been. Even though I don't think it's that much of a high impact card, I think there's other hand traps that are more of a high impact than Ash is. But the problem with those other high impact hand traps is they're only good in certain matchups, while Ash, no matter what, will always be live in every matchup that you play against. So, you know, it's not going to be a dead card or something like that that you don't have to worry about, right? So that's why it's kind of in most people's main decks. It's just because it can hit every deck in the meta. So it's a good, you know, good play overall. The Bestials, Juris Worm, and Magnamut. This is probably going to be in most people's side decks. Tier limit is running around, so that is always something you're going to have to worry about. Same thing with like Dragon Link as well. Anything that's playing a light or dark that requires to be in graveyard, the Bestials are going to be up there. Some people might be main decking this. I don't think it's like the only decks that might main deck this is like Bestial. If you're doing some Bestial shenanigans with like, again, something like Dragon Link, or if you're playing like Bestial Branded or something like that, you might main deck. You might see some main decks with it, but it's most likely going to be in most people's side deck as a hand trap. So yeah, this is probably makes sense. I think Juris Worm is better than Magna just because Juris is at 3 and Magna is at 1. So I think that's probably the pick, is Juris is better just because you're able to play more copies of it. So yeah, that's my personal opinion there. Contaxi. I don't think this does much. It's at most niche, like, but I think it's just don't. It doesn't really hit much. If you're scared of Rika, maybe, but like Unchained has plenty of, especially with like something like SP Little Knight being in the game now. Like, this just gives you an opportunity to give your opponent a body that just links into an SP Little Knight, right? So just don't. I think it's actually worse than these guys. I don't think it's worth playing this at all. I think it's just not there, just because something like SP does exist. DD Crow. To be honest with you, I do think that DD Crow is better, but I still think it's going to be in most people's side decks. I had this in like some main decks in the last one I did. I think it's kind of fallen off just a tad bit just because Rescue has now been popping up and DD Crow doesn't have that much of an impact against like Rescue. So probably if you're going to play it, it is probably going to be in most side decks. I think it is better than the Bestials because it has more of an overall, like this can hit purely than like the Bestials can't, while DD Crow can hit the purely cards, right? This, like if you go DD Crow, whatever the black cat is targeting, then all of a sudden they're not going to get to an XYZ monster, right? So I think the card is personally better than the Bestials, but I don't think it's going to be in some people's main decks anymore just because of where the meta has shifted to. Don't be surprised if you do see this in most people's side deck, but I just don't think it's really that much of a main deck worthy. Shifter. Shifter is in some main decks. It can't be in most people's main decks just because not every deck can play under Shifter. So only some decks can main deck this. If you're going to play it, you're either, you know, in the side deck or main deck. Like Vanquished obviously can play this. What else can play? Like Lab, if you're really scared of something like Tier, can play this. Obviously, Flunder can play this as well. The only problem with Shifter is like the top decks like Unchain and Rescue. Even though they do somewhat get affected by Shifter, they can pretty much still play under Shifter. They just can't go fully off. They have to kind of reserve their resources. That's kind of the problem with Shifter, is it just doesn't really hit the top decks as hard as you want it to hit, right? Like Rescue is still able to set 4 and, you know, pass on that, right? On that. So Shifter, even though it's a good card overall, if you're able to play it, it's not going to hit like the Unchained super hard. It's going to change the end board, sure, but it's pretty much not going to stop them from going somewhat combo, right? So again, Shifter is still a very good card if you're able to play it in your deck, but not all decks can play the Shifter. Droll and Lockbird. I think this should be in some people's main decks, to be honest with you. I think Droll is really good right now. It hits a lot. There are some decks it can't hit, obviously, like against the Unchained matchup. Droll doesn't really do anything against that. But for most matchups, Droll is really, really good. Like, it hits the Manadia matchup. It's going to hit the Infernoble matchup. It's going to hit something like the Flunder if you're really scared of Flunderies. It hits Rescue as well, because they do tend to search a lot. So Droll can hit that deck as well, and Purely does search a lot as well. So, you know, Droll also hits that as well. So I think this card is actually really good right now. Sure, there are, you know, obviously some matchups where Droll doesn't do anything, but I think the majority of the meta does get hit enough by this card where I think it is viable for some people's main decks. Maybe not most main decks, but it's going to be in some people's main decks for sure. Effect Veiler. This is probably gonna be in some people's main decks as well. This is kind of like if you already have the Ash and like the Imperm, which we'll get to in just 1 second, in your deck, and you want to play another Handtrap that isn't like, you know, Droll that might be dead in certain matchups, right? You want another card that might be good against every matchup, right? It's gonna be the Effect Veiler for sure. But, you know, it does get turned off by something like Droll. It plays into the Thrust, but I guess Ash does that as well. So I don't think it's going to be a most people main deck. I think it is going to be in some people's side or main deck. Some main decks, not most main decks. I think it's the top of some main decks. I'll put Droll above Shifter as well. Yeah, that probably makes sense. I think it's a very good card, but I can see why some people don't want to main deck this. Maybe they want to go for another high impact Handtrap instead of another just like a card for a 1-for-1 trade or something like that. So even though it's very good, I don't think it's going to be in most people's main decks. Phantasme. Oh, wow. This is kind of fallen off just a tad bit, I think. You might see this in some people's side decks. I don't think it's really as good as people thought it was at the beginning of the format. Why is that? Unchained can pretty much play through Phantasme. It was kind of thought that Phantasme might have a good matchup against the Unchained because a lot of the Unchained cards target. But the problem with that is if they're playing the big dog, they pretty much have an out to the Phantasme, or if they, you know, a bomb, the Big Bomb can out this as well because the Big Bomb does not target for its destruction. The problem with, Unchained can pretty much play through it now. Maybe like Purely, Rescue plays a lot of links as well. But the problem with Rescue is they're setting up on a lot anyways, so I don't think the Phantasme is going to do enough. It turns on something like the Thrust immediately to search something like Talents, which is going to be a problem, right? I just don't think Phantasme is as good as people is thinking it is. I think it's still going to be in some people's side deck. If you're really scared of something like the Rescue matchup, I can see why you want to put it in the side deck. But I just don't think it's as good as people thought it was early in the format. So I think it's going to only be in some people's side deck. Ghost Bell. I really don't think this card is that good. Honestly, I probably want to put it in just don't. But the card is really, like, it's not bad. I think it's niche. I think it's very niche. Like, it's close to being just don't. It really is, but I'm going to put it in the niche. I just don't think it hits enough. I think this meta, I think the Bestials and DD Crow is just better than it. I think this hits a lot more than what Ghost Bell is trying to hit. Like if you're versing the tier elements, there's a lot of the time where they're chain blocking where Ghost Bell can't activate, so you want to have the Bestials in that slot instead, and DD Crow and stuff like that. So I just don't think it's really worth it. I'm actually going to put it at the top of Dome. It's a good card. I just don't think this is the meta for it. So we're going to put it at the top of just Dome. Maybe I put it at the bottom of niche, but I just don't think the card's good right now. Ghost Moaner and Moonlit Chill is in niche. It's somewhat of a better Veiler. If you're scared of Shifter, this is a card that can activate under Shifter. Veiler cannot, so you can do that. But like, I just don't think it's really that great. It's cool. I like when it comes up, but I don't know. I don't really think it's that great. It's niche. It really is. Ghost Org. It really should be in just don't, but I'm going to put it in niche just because Centurions is now out thanks to Valiant Smashers, and if you're really scared of Centurions, the Ghost Org does hit that deck pretty hard. So I'm going to put it in niche, but that's really the only deck that Ghost Org hits, is that. So yeah, we're going to keep it in niche. Ghost Reapers, the format is just too diverse. Just don't. Spooky Dogwood, if you're really wanting to play for time, then sure, put it in niche, but I don't really think the card's that great. Gnome Material, just don't. I really don't think it's that great. Imperm. I think this is another card that is in most people's main decks. Just because, one, it's most likely going to be live in every single matchup that you're playing against. But two, it's a trap card. So it's not activating something like the Triple Tactic Thrust, not activating the Triple Tactic Talents either. So it plays around that as well. And on the draw, if you draw this for turn, it's not even that bad because you can trade a negate for it, right? So I think Imperm is really good. I think it's actually better than Ash right now. I think Imperm is one of the best hand traps you can be playing right now. Really, really insane card that you must have for this meta, I think. Nibiru. Oh, man. I don't know where to put Nibiru at. So, if you are scared of, like, Infernoble, I'm going to put it here for now. If you're scared of, like, the Infernoble or the Mana DM matchup or even something like Unchained, you're probably going to want to main deck Nib. Right, but the problem with Nib is most of those decks can play around it, right? Infernobles have Gear Freed, which they can get to. They might not get to it every game, but they can pretty much get to, so that plays around Nibiru. Mana DM can usually make a Baron before their 5th summon, so that plays around Nibiru as well. Unchained can pretty much just play through it, like they'll get 2 level 6s on field, you have to Nib there, right? And they'll pretty much still play through it and still set up on a board, right? So, like, the problem with Nib right now for me is the fact that pretty much it doesn't do that much because, one, they're either playing around it, or two, they'll just play through it, right? Like, even like in the rescue matchup, right? Like, they're going to have 4 set cards before you can Nibiru the Turbulence, right? So, in that situation, Nib just doesn't do anything because, sure, you nibbed him, but now you still have to deal with the 4 back row, which is going to be scary. I just don't think it's really that great. I'm gonna put it in most side decks. I don't know. It's like, it's one of those cards I just don't know where to put it. I really don't. Like, I can see some people in some people's main deck. I can also see it in most people's side decks as well. I don't know. I just don't truly know where to put this card at. We'll put it in the bottom of some main decks. I, again, truly just don't think the card is really that good right now. Just because people are actually, you know, it's not doing much. They're either playing around it or they're playing through it. Gamma. Yeah, it's whatever. Probably like niche. It's not bad. Like, people are playing it. Like, if you're playing Dragon Link and you want to have the new Red Eyes card, the one that can send a normal monster from deck to grave, you're probably playing the Gamma just because your driver is the normal monster. And, you know, Gamma is still a very good hand trap. The only problem with Gamma right now is it's limited, and that pretty much hurts it a lot. So even though I think it's a really good hand trap, it's going to be in niche just because it is at 1, so it's highly doubtful that you're going to see it in your hand, and you still have to play a brick for it as well. Contact C, like, if you're scared of like emergency and rescue, maybe, but like, I think I'll put it at the top of just dump. Ghost Bell should be up here as well. I'll put it above Ghost Bell, I guess, but I just don't think the card's that great. I really don't. If you're really scared of rescue, but rescue can play around a shifter, so that's not that much of a problem. Branded, maybe, but again, I think shifter is just the better call, right? So I don't know. I don't think Contact C is really that good. The Ritual, the one that can prevent, like, negate a target or something like that, I don't think is really that good. Depends on the deck you're playing. Like, if you're playing like an FTK, then you're probably playing this card, but a lot of cards do target, so I'll put it in niche, but I just don't think it's as good as people think it is. Goldmeister is garbage. We'll put it like way down here. I don't think it's that good. And Token Collector, there's really no decks making tokens right now. So that is my tier list. So I think Ash and Imperm are always going to be in most people's main decks. That's just something you're always going to have to worry about. I think Imperm is better than Ash just because it plays around the talents, plays around the thrust, and if you draw it for turn, it's not even dead. So it's pretty cool. Some people's main decks, I think Droll and Nib Droll is very, very good right now. I think this card should be in most people's main decks, I think, but if you are going to play a hand trap. But I can see, like, I think Droll is a very, very good card right now that it hits a lot of the decks. Effect Veiler is cool. Shifter, again, not all decks can play this because not all decks can play under Shifter. Nib, it's cool, but I think a lot of people can play around Nib, so it's not really that great. The Bestials and DD Crows are going to be in most people's side decks because you're not going to be versing tier every single game. So there's that. But you want these cards just in case it does come up. Phantasme is cool, but I just don't think it's really as good as people think it is. And then the niche cards, Gamma, it's at 1. Ghost of Mourner, it's cool, but I don't really think it's that great. Ghost Dog only hits the Centurion matchup. Spooky Dogwood, it's only a time card. A lot of things do target, but it does waste a card in hand, so I don't think it's that great. And then just don't. Contact C, Shifter is better. Ghost Bell, the Bestials are better. Gnome Material, just don't. Ghost Reaper, the meta is too diverse. Even though SP does exist, so you can always hit something like SP Little Knight, I just don't think it's really that great. Chaos Hunter and Lancia are cool cards, but they're just not for this meta. Skullmeister, again, the Bestials and DD Crow is better, and even Ghost Bell is better than it as well. Contact C, SP Little Knight exists. There's really no point. And Token Collector is because there's no decks really making tokens right now. So yeah, that is my hand trap. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.